lots of some more. Yeah.
Are you able to see?
Yes, sir, but it's not in full screen mode.
Oh, just a minute, just a minute. I hope it's visible now.
Yes, sir. So with your permission, sir, shall we start?
As you, I am already there.
Yes, sir. So we are recording this session, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
When you tell me to start, I'll start.
Okay, so let me introduce you to the participants and then we can start.
Fine.
So good afternoon, participants. Today we have with us Professor Vinod Mishra. He is a professor of English in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Roorkee. He earned his PhD in English from Ellen Mithila University, Darbhanga, with a dissertation on the novels of Mulk Raj Anand. His research interests include Indian writing in English, folk literature, translation studies, world literatures, poetry, film and literature, graphic novels, professional communication, English language teaching, literature and philosophy, existentialism, diasporic studies, feminism, and regional literatures in English. A widely published scholar and poet, he has authored, edited, and contributed to numerous books and peer-reviewed international journals. Professor Mishra has received several honors for his contributions to literature and currently serves in key academic and editorial roles in national scholarly organizations. So the floor is open to you, sir.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, friends. I'm here to talk about technical reports. And the very first lecture is on the importance and structure of the report. Now, in today's age, all of us must try to understand the fact that reports carry a lot of importance in a professional world. It actually has become quite mandatory for most of us to know the art of writing a report. At whatever position we be, in whatever capacities we are, and in whichever organization we are, our writing ability, which unfolds the ability of reasoning, the ability of structuring, the ability of evaluating, the ability of convincing, actually can be found reflected in reports. Now the question is, why reports? What are reports? And many of us also have the curiosity as to what sort of reports are we supposed to write. Of course, many of us will say that in an age of ChatGPT and AI, is it really required to write a report? But I do still believe that whatever facilities we have, they can only be helpful to us. They cannot provide us the sort of vigor and the content that we have as individuals. So before we go into the depth of the discussion, let us try to understand what exactly is meant by report. How and from where has the word report originated from? Report actually originates from the Latin word reporto, which actually means a sort of communication from someone who has information to someone who actually wants it. We can also say that it might have been derived from the word reporter. Reporter actually is just like a porter, and a porter is one who carries our goods from one place to another. So, as a reporter or as a report writer, what we are supposed to do is we are actually to disseminate the information that we have to those who actually requires. Now, another question that might be creeping in our minds is that what actually should be covered in our report? Because we come across every day as a professional, we come across several reports. But then, as Sharing and Christian says, that a report is just like a bathing suit. It covers everything that has to be covered, but nothing more. Now, my dear friends, what does this mean? This actually means that a report is not like any other ordinary or any other ostentatious forms of writing. It actually has to cover only the required thing, meaning thereby the technicalities. And what exactly do we mean by technicalities? Why a report covers everything that has to be covered? Because it doesn't have any scope of any extra word, any extra content, any extra information, my dear. Thus, having a look at that and considering the salient features of the report, let us try to understand, let us try to have a sort of working definition of a report in general. Later on, if time permits, we shall also be able to unravel the surprises of other reports as well, the structure of other reports as well, and why reports have become very important. Now, I would really be thankful to Sahulaji and his colleagues who actually decided to go for such a sort of workshop, and that also might have been because of some of the need that actually could have necessitated them and that could have prompted them to organize such a sort of event where people from different sorts of areas, remote areas, even urban, rural, everywhere, they are able to grasp some knowledge from those people who are already working in that area and they are trying to disseminate their information. So that is actually the result only of a report. Thus, my dear friends, a report is actually a formal communication. Let us try to look at every word that we are trying to focus upon. Formal communication written for a specific purpose. It includes a description of procedures followed for collection and analysis of data, their significance, the conclusions drawn from them, and if required. Now, if we try to interpret these definitions, perhaps every answer to a report lies here. It is actually a formal communication. We never write a report just the morning we get up and think of writing it, because it doesn't have any imagination. It actually is a sort of requirement, and hence it is formal, and it is written for a specific purpose. Unless and until the need arose, Sahulaji and his colleagues were not in a position to go for this event, which would have been possible only after a report when they could have found some sort of revelations or the gaps, and they are trying to fill in this gap. It actually includes a description of procedures. Now, what are these procedures? And these procedures are followed for collection and analysis of data. Whenever a new thing is launched in the market, whenever a new product comes to the market, before that, a lot of survey is done on the customers, on the clients, on those people who actually require, and based on that they actually come out with certain needs which people require, and then they analyze the data, their significance, and finally the conclusion. They might have come to the conclusion that if we go for this, maybe this will work, and finally they have come out. So is the case with a product. when a product comes to the market, before the product, at the back of the product, there's so many needs which are associated, so many views, opinions, fine, and then from them and recommendations if required. You will see from time to time. Earlier, it was very difficult for us to organize such lectures, but now it has become feasible for all of us. Maybe that might have been the need of the hour when in COVID we started thinking that we could come out of this dire situation, of this critical juncture, and then this online thing came into being, my dear friends. And even after that, when we had enough of the online thing, now there are other recommendations also. So every report, finally, when it comes to a conclusion, it may also have a recommendation, but then there's a condition of the recommendation, and the condition is that if recommendations are required, if they are sought after. Now, having a look at the definition, working definition of the report, what have actually we gathered? What features do we find? There are certain things that we have tried to extract out of it. That first, a report is a formal. Something that is formal has to cater to the formalities, and the formalities are that since it is formal, it has to be in a conventional form, in a conventional format. It cannot be like any other piece of writing. It cannot be a poem which will begin from anywhere and which will end anywhere. It cannot be in the form of a story which will start on abruptly and will also end abruptly, and the readers and the audience members will be thinking in and between what transpired. So, my dear friends, it has to be presented in a conventional form. That is what we mean by the structure of the report. It has to be factual. When we say that no report is actually the result of a figment of our imagination, then what do we need? We actually need that a report has to be written based on the data. Unless until we have the data, we cannot analyze the data, we cannot interpret the data. And these factual things will also prompt us to know where it has to be organized. And it has to be organized. But again, there is another question that maybe you are not interested in another's report. That is why we say that it has actually to be written not only for a specific purpose, but for a specific audience members also. Here also, there are specific audience members. Here we are not talking to people who do not require this. Here we are also talking to people who actually are specific. They actually need it in their everyday professional lives. So is the case with the report, my dear friends. And then it is always objective. Now, there is a point of difference here that when we say subjective, we actually mean so many things. A poem can be a subjective, it can have so many meanings. A play can be subjective, a movie can be subjective, fine. Other forms of writing can be subjective. But when you are going to write a report, you have an objective before you. And this objective actually tells you what you are going to do after this report is written, what actually we are going to achieve. And then this objective can be met by data collection and the significance of such data. In every situation, not every data can work. We cannot collect the data of so many people if we have to collect the data by going to them, talking to them, because there are different ways of data collection. So the objective behind the data collection has to be specified quite early. Who will be the target audience? Who can give us the real data? And based on this data, which we are going to interpret, we will come to a sort of conclusion, my dear friends. And this conclusion may be, if somebody who has told you to write the report, they may tell you whether you are required to suggest the recommendations or not. So up to conclusion, the report becomes complete, and that also tells us how every report is different. Some reports only require a sort of conclusion, isn't it? But there are some reports, say for example, the report which is given by a doctor, isn't it? The doctor gives the report, and based on that report, the doctor also gives you certain suggestions. The doctor gives you certain pieces of advice. The same is true when you are going to write a technical report, my dear friends. Now, another question that all of us are thinking: why reports? The world is so beautiful. The world is going in the right way. Why do we actually require good report writers? In many organizations, they have got technical writers. These technical writers actually have to write these specific tasks or fulfill specific tasks. Now, what do technical reports do? Imagine that you're working on a project, whatever it be. Do you not try to analyze the progress of the project from time to time? So what does the report do there? Your report, when you evaluate the performance of the task, your report only can tell you, update you about the progress, and then further planning, isn't it? Not everything can be concluded in a day or finished in a day. So you require from time to time the progress. It also can tell you what amount of labor is required, what sort of material is required. Sometimes or the other, you find, I'm reminded of one very beautiful example when there was in Silkiara. Silkiara is in Uttarakhand, and there was a tunnel where so many people had been trapped. No, and so many men, materials, machines were brought into operation. And my dear friends, when nothing worked, then we had some expert from a different country who came, and then finally, so how did we come to know it? After experimenting all these, we found that some more thing is required, some more expertise is required, and then we got that man, and finally all the people who were trapped were able to come out and enjoy the sunshine, my dear friend. So a report can reveal gaps in thinking, and after that, there has been a sort of awareness among us. So a report creates a sort of awareness. A report also spreads information, it disseminates information, and it also helps in decision making as to what will the other step be, what sort of action can be taken. Moreover, it also establishes harmony. Now, we shall see how harmony can be established through a report when we come to the types of report. My dear friends, it is usually said that a report is actually a professional's only tangible product. Look at the observation on the right hand side. It presents his investigation, his testing and experimentation. If his efforts are to count in the judgment of his superiors, he must describe clearly what he has done. Suppose you have written a report, and the report is to be submitted to somebody, who may be your CEO, maybe your boss, maybe your in charge, maybe your officer. So he or she may not be convinced. Then perhaps you can give the explanations. He must show the significance of the work. Why do you think like that? Why you have come to this conclusion? And if you have come to this conclusion, what recommendations do you suggest? And often the engineer's written report is his only contact with the management based on the report. That is why you will find, my dear friends, in many organizations, there is a set of people who are given the task of writing the reports. And that way you also establish your own credibility. Now, many of you might be eager enough to know, because you are working in organizations, fine, in many educational institutes as well. So you might be thinking, that should reports only be written? No, my dear friends. Reports can be classified either as written or oral. But here our focus is on the written part. Orally, all of us, I think most of us are able to present our report. But before presenting, do we not need to write our reports? So our focus is on written reports. When we come to written reports, we must also try to understand that there can be two categories. One can be informal, the other can be formal. We are concerned more about the formal reports. Informal reports may be letter and recommendation. For example, you have been recommended as one of the referees of some of your candidates, your students, fine, or your employees. Now, there you write a letter of recommendation that will come under informal, fine, informal report. There also you analyze, but then there you simply give a sort of information about the person. So that does not have much scope for a lot of discussion, my dear friends. And then when we come to formal reports can be divided into informational, analytical, and routine. Now, all these three categories of reports, they are different from each other. They have some amount of similarity, no doubt, but then they are different. Routine reports, all of you might be seeing every year. Your organization provides you the routine report. They may be annual report. They also may be progress report, laboratory report, inspection, inventory reports, annual reports, fine. But when we say that we have to have informational reports, we must also see to it that in informational reports, you do not have much to do. There is only a set pro forma where the report writer will simply evaluate and will tick. Let us also try to see the difference between the formal reports and the informal. A formal report will be a bit bulky. It will be a bit bulky because it will have all parts of the structure of the report. That is why it will have so many pages. But then informal reports may not have that much of room, that much of space. There is no possibility of too many graphics, too many figures, charts, and all. It is actually dependent on the primary sources and that you write. For example, you write a recommendation letter, you write, and towards the end you write, I recommend the case of Mr. X and X on the basis of his performance that I have watched during his stay in this organization. But then when we talk about formal reports, we find that formal reports have got a lot of space where you have room for graphics, you have room for figures, tables, charts, pie charts, many things. So it may be longer, my dear friends. Now here you can see, when we say information report, now what is the function of the informational report and what does it do? It is simply for a sort of record of data. It is preserved for the purpose of the data. Facts will be organized in a manner and presented to the reader to use as he sees fit or to retain as part of his knowledge. For example, a book, that is a sort of informational report. But then when a book is on a particular subject, or on a particular topic, a paper is on a particular topic, then naturally it will be more than informational. It will actually become a sort of interpretive because the writer of that report will interpret, will analyze, and in order to prove his point, he will have certain things to help him, to guard him, to prompt him. So informational reports can only help integrate the management, employees, and the companies. Whereas interpretive report will not only interpret, analyze the facts and results, but it can also provide some sort of recommendations. But remember that not every interpretive report may have recommendations unless and until you have been asked for. Now here I have provided certain examples of informative reports. Fine. The specifications, as we have said, that it actually is restricted to aims and objectives. Here there is no analysis. That is because it is shorter. It may be one page. It may be from 1 to 2 pages as well. But when we say interpretive, the pages may go further. Policy statement reports, readership surveys, sales report, credit reports, employee booklets, committee reports, production reports. All these are only interpretive reports. But remember, if it is a production report and you find that there has been a decline in the sales, there's been a decline in the production, if there has been some glitches in the quality, then naturally another committee will be formed, and the person will be engaged to write an interpretive report where he may come up with certain recommendations, my dear friends. For example, advertising reports, examination report. In all the institutions, you will find that there may be midterm, end term, then sessionals and all. Through that, we are analyzing the progress of an individual. Even in markets also, the statistic analysis, market surveys, accounting, there is actually enough room for analysis, and the interpretation of the data chiefly depends on the data which has been provided, as it is factual, my dear friends. And if you really want to show how there has been a downward trend, readership surveys, so for that you make use of illustrations in the form of graphs, in the form of charts, and finally based on all that you come to the findings and recommendations, my dear friend. Finally, at the end of the report, as a report writer, because you were there right from the beginning, you are going to provide, you are going to give some solutions based on the data. But then if you really feel that something more is required to be done, then you actually give a sort of recommendation. Based on your recommendation, some decision has to be taken. My dear friends, many of you who are in organizations working, your annual report, every individual's annual report, that is also discussed when finally you are going to be promoted to the next order of the status. So a lot of analysis is being done. What are your weak areas? What are your gray areas? What are your strengths? Fine. So all these are done, and finally there comes a decision. That is how reports have become very important, my dear friends. As regards routine reports, as we said, that they are, as the term itself says, routine, meaning thereby routine in nature. So they are written from time to time. Sometimes it is yearly, sometimes it is half yearly, fine. And they have got everyday matters, sales performance. They are confined to fixed problems. Language is not that important, because here you are not going to convince, my dear friends. When you are writing an analytical report, the language actually plays a very vital role. We shall, in the next lecture, we shall talk about the language, how your language can really work wonders in order to get what you really want to achieve and what you really want to suggest. Because you have to persuade the readers, you have to persuade, and the reader may be anyone, isn't it? Sometimes many people often say that whatever amount of labor I put into my recommendations are never heard. Why? Because you were not able to convince the person or the reader of what you are going to do. Now, when we say informal reports, as we have said, and here we actually have to devote some amount of time on the structural part, my dear friend. Now, here two terms are very important. In every organization, you will find it is not that every now and then you are going to write an analytical or a sort of informational report. Sometimes you are also going to write informally, and that will also work wonders. I hope I am audible. Hello?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Okay, fine. So when we say informal reports, you will find that that may be sometimes in the form of a letter report, sometimes in the form of a memo report, and both have their own specification, both have their own purposes. Let us try to understand that how, if both of them have the same purpose, where is the distinction, where is the difference, how they are different from each other. Structurally, a letter report will have, it will follow the format of a letter. Most of the letters nowadays are being written in the full block format. By full block format, I mean that all sorts of information, they have been flushed to the left. My dear friends, in earlier days, we had different styles of formatting our letters: hanging style, semi-hanging, But then nowadays we are following full block pro forma, where everything has been flushed to the left. Now here you can find the date will be there, inside address will be there, subject, salutation, main body, complementary clause, signature, and enclosure. Now this is all about letter report. But when we come to the memo, and since memo is to be issued, and when we say memo, it is actually memorandum, and that means inter-office memorandum. It is actually circulated within the office only. I mean, within the same unit, maybe within the same organization only. And it is actually addressed to so many people, people of that unit, people of that organization. So here what we do, there is actually a transaction of everyday business matters. Fine. Maybe there is a sort of announcement. We say when we talk about the purpose of the memos inform a new policy is going to be evolved. So we are going to inform all the employees. A new thing that you want to be regulated. So again, we are going to inform. Sometimes something goes wrong and you want that some cautionary measures should be taken. Again, you are going to write a convincing memo where you want to persuade, my dear friends. So it talks about the routine business matters. It is an internal communication, as I said, because we call it inter-office memorandum also. Now here, because in earlier we said letter report will be in the form of a letter, that may go outside also, but since it is inter-office memorandum, it is more informal. Even in informal, it is more informal than the letter report. Of course, there will be an introductory paragraph, the main text will be there, and there will be a concluding paragraph. Fine. Here we will not say dear Mr. X or dear Mr. Y. Fine. We shall simply say date, and then fine, letter number or whatsoever you say, and then there will be an introductory paragraph through which you want to inform, to persuade, to convince, or to ask, to explain, isn't it? And then finally the concluding paragraph will be there, and then comes the signature of the person. So this is all about memo report. Memos are often becoming very important nowadays in every organization. You know, something goes wrong, again there is a memo. Something is good, that is likely to be interpreted, employed, and that is going to be implemented, again we write a memo. Now, let us try to come to our main thing, that is technical report. Till now, we have given a brief overview of how reports are, but then our main focus is on the structure of the report. Imagine that you are going to write a report. My dear friends, all sorts of outcomes and all sorts of resolutions are done on the basis of the report. That is why you need to understand what are the various strategies, what are the various procedures for writing the report. Now, the very first thing is, why should you write the report? The world could have been very beautiful even without writing the report. Your life also could have been going gaga even without writing of the reports. But then in a professional setting, we have to write the reports. So when you're going to write the report, the first thing that should be there in your mind is how you are going to define the scope and the purpose of your report. Again, the second thing that you're going to talk about is who are going to be my readers. As I said, based on your report, some decision will be taken. So who is the other person to whom you are going to submit your report? What are your business relationship with him or her? Fine. So determine your audience. Maybe sometimes your boss only is the immediate audience, but sometimes maybe there's a larger audience, isn't it? Our customers, clients, maybe many more people, isn't it? Fine, the shareholders and all. So, and again, once you have determined your audience, you are going to collect the material, collect the data. Where from the data will come? Sometimes they provide you the data. Sometimes you have to think about the data. You're going to write a research paper. You have to think about the data. In which area? Who had said what? How do I make a difference? How do I distinguish my line of argument? Where have I got to get the gaps in the reasoning? And finally, when you have collected the data, my dear friends, you are going to organize the entire thing. This organization is also very important. At times, people having a lot of information, a deluge of information rather, they actually at a helter-skelter as to how it is going to be organized. And for that, you actually need to understand how to structure. What would be the structure of the report? And when you know the structure of the report, but before that, you will be creating a sort of outline. Now, what is an outline? At times, many people get confused between outline and the table of contents. Here, let me make it very clear. Outline is actually a blueprint in a nutshell of what you are going to do. In outline, you are also, because when you are collecting the data, it is in bits and pieces, and you are to put it into several heads, and this outline from time to time will remind you of, will actually make you aware of where you are missing and where this piece of information is there. I usually say in my lectures that when you are going to make an outline, you must remember the tailor who has already cut the clothes and now he or she is going to weave it together. So outline actually tells you. He also creates a sort of outline on a paper, my dear friends. The outline of a shirt or the outline of a trouser, and then finally he cuts it accordingly, and then again he finally weaves it together. Now, when we are going to define the purpose of our report, what exactly do we need? The very first thing that we need is, what will this report do? Because you have been assigned the task of writing it. It is not that you are a poet and you are going to write a poem because you were stirred by the outside scenery of the window that actually struck your attention, my dear. Here, somebody will give you the task of writing the report, and this somebody will provide you certain instructions, which we call TOR. This is terms of reference. And these terms of reference will tell you, will provide you the clear instructions. And then this will also tell us, this will actually make us aware how to identify the problem. And again, once you have identified the problem, then you know, if you don't have the data, then actually you know where you can get the data. It can actually propel and prompt us to spend time in working out the scope of the report. Maybe the sort of analysis that I'm going to do on the basis of the data will not be suitable in every situation. So there will be some scope, there will be some limitation also. It also, these terms of reference can also provide you with a chance to seek clarification before you are going to make a start. I mean, before you are going to start writing the report. Sometimes the instructions are quite cumbersome, ambiguous, not clear. So you can ask the person what exactly is meant by that. Your task will become easier, path will become smoother, my dear friends. Now, who are going to be the recipients of this report? Readers, I mean, audience members. My dear friends, whatever you are going to prepare, you must have your audience in your mind. And this audience having in your mind, suppose you're working in an area of mechanical engineering, you're working in an area of ITS, you're working in an area of bioinformatics or whatsoever, naturally, you will be anticipating the audience based on the audience background, based on the audience reading or their expertise. You are going to think about how to tailor your reports. Sometimes, as I said, maybe only people of your organization are the readers, or maybe sometimes people from other organizations also are the readers, shareholders, customers, and members. So determine your audience before you are going to write the report. Now, this is again a question, my dear. Should all our readers be favorable to us? No. In every organization, there are different sets of people. Some people are never going to be convinced with your line of argument. So you have to decide how you can bring an antagonistic person also getting convinced with your line of argument, because your readers knowledge, maybe some of them are only primary readers, some of them are secondary readers, some of the readers have got some association with your organization, and then if they some way or the other are from the same association, their expectations become too higher, my dear friends. So much depends upon your relationship. Maybe you're going to talk about some new product about which other people do not know, and you have been assigned the task of writing the report, so naturally you know more. So some people may not be convinced by what you are going to show. So always try to keep something in hand so that you may convince them. Now comes data collection. As you know, nowadays it is very difficult, not difficult to collect the data. There are several sources now, and internet is one of the prime sources. But the question is, when you are going for some concrete ones, you actually need to be aware of what sort of data collection method you will be utilizing. Maybe if it is a personal interview, nowadays even personal interviews have become very costly, and that is why with the advance of technology, we can also have a sort of interview over phones. But in most of the situations, people do not want to reveal the exact data over telephone, my difference, and then you suddenly float a questionnaire which at times are returned, at times are not returned. But let us have the satisfaction that if you floated 100 questionnaires and even 50% of them are returned, that 50% can become a sort of representative. You can take that you only could get the data from 50 people, and you can analyze that data, my dear. Once you have analyzed the data, you are going to evaluate it. Because as I said, some of the people may be favorable, some may be antagonistic. Now, while you are writing the report, going to write the report, and you have collected the data from different sources, you sometimes quote, you sometimes try to prove your data with the help of some other surveys or some other reports. Then you need to understand what is the credibility of the author from whom you have taken. Is the author's data based on his own experience or on others' experience? Nowadays, things change very fast. So you must also see to it that if you have taken or culled from a book or from a journal, what is actually the reputation of the journal? Has this article been published in a sort of journal? What is the credibility, my different? And then how, to what extent does this fulfill your line of argument, or does this fulfill what you really want to achieve? What are the opinions of the other specialists? And when was this data collected? My dear friends, as I said, nowadays things change very fast. And in a fast changing world, you also need to understand when was this report published? What is actually the relevance of this report? Because till now, there might have been a lot of water being flowed in the Ganges, a lot of developments might have taken place. Hence, you are to look at the timeliness of the data. Now, having had everything, now you are going to organize. My dear friends, why you might be saying, why I'm telling you all these things? Because I'm trying you to see to it that how systematically you can organize so that next time you do not find yourself in a sort of delusion, my dear friends. Now you have the materials and you're going to organize your materials. So when you're going to organize your material, let us follow certain principles. The principles are logical ordinary. You all know you are all good people and all, people who are learned one. But then sometimes it so happens that we put one thing at one place, but the points that we are going to do or say there or put there, they are not corroborating, my different. They're not supporting. So logical ordering should be there. And if you're going to coordinate, there should be subordination. Fine. You should also number, because your report will not be a cut and dried thing. It will actually be in certain parts. So divide your reports, number your reports. And when you are going to do half of the work of writing the report is done when you are actually trying to deliver, find some important lines of phrasing, and you are going to divide, my dear friends. Now, another thing that you may find is once you have done all that, then you will find how you are going to write your report. You have data, everything is there with you, my dear friends. Now you are going to write the report. Now, writing is very important, and that is my main concern. There are certain phases in writing. The first is pre-writing stage. In pre-writing stage, not only you are aware of the background of your readers, but you're also aware of your own purpose. How does your purpose and the expectations of the readers, having their background in mind, how do they come to a common thread? Now, another thing that always must be kept into consideration while writing is the KISS formula. What is this KISS formula? Meaning thereby, keep it simple and short. Nowadays, many people, while going to write the report, make it so burdensome, so cumbersome that at times the entirety of the report actually becomes very misleading, my dear friends. And then layout, which is very important. And most of the people who are from the engineering, science, and other fields, they are aware of the layout. Much depends upon how you have organized, how you have followed the layout. This is actually when you are going to decide in the pre-writing stage. Next comes writing stage. What is the writing stage, my dear friends? Organization of the data. You are already aware that you will organize your data systematically. Fine. And when the data has been organized systematically, you actually require people like us who can tell you that your language has to be standard, your language has to be quite specific. Fine. Use of language. Which method you are going to apply? Direct, indirect, affirmative, persuading, and whether, because every report that you are writing, naturally you are writing, since you are writing, you think that it is your views. But my dear friends, every report should have a sort of objectivity, detachment, and truth. And that is why you are writing on the basis of the data that you have been given. That is why there is a third person narrative sort of thing, even though it may appear to be in the first person narrative, but then it is not you only, it is actually on the basis of the data that has been provided to you. Then comes the language game, my dear friends. Much depends upon the language. The world is beautiful, fine, because as Descartes, the famous philosopher, says, thanks to language, man became man. Fine. So language actually provides you the sort of coherence, the sort of strength in order to persuade a person, to win a person, even though the person may be antagonistic. When you have done all that, my dear friends, then comes the post-writing thing. And what is the post-writing thing? The post-writing thing is that you also need to see where you are in the report. And in that, the last stage of your report should actually be the post-writing phase, where when you have written the entire document, you are going to revise. When you are going to revise, you may find that there are certain things that could have been eliminated. There are certain things that could have been controlled. There are certain words, certain paragraphs that could have been substituted. There are certain longer paragraphs that could have been split. We shall discuss that in the next lecture, fine, when we talk about the style or the language part. Now, my dear friends, here let me explain a little bit about, because report flows in an organization, sometimes inside, sometimes outside also. So they may at times flow vertically, they may also flow horizontally, and they may also flow radially. And you know that when you are writing a report for your organization and the report goes external, so language has to be very controlled, my dear friends. Fine. So vertically went through organizational channels, and there also you have to see the network. Fine. You also have to see the ladders to whom you are writing. Horizontally between two departments, and radially they are distributed throughout the company to reach everyone, and frequently sometimes also sent outside the company. Now, let us try to devote a little time on the structural part of the report. because you have said that layout is very important, but how to structure so that our report becomes a sort of whole. It does not appear like any lopsided thing, my dear friend. A report can be divided into three parts. The very first part we call prefatory material, fine, and this prefatory material will have certain things, fine, and then we'll have the main elements of the report, then the back matter. That is how report actually gains strength, report actually gets bulk. When we talk about the prefatory material, my dear friends, there are 10 elements that we should take into consideration. Most of you are depending and varying upon the organization that you're working in. They might be giving you some sort of layout on the pro forma, but where it is not, where you have to write your reports yourself, you are actually to follow the standard norms, where your report should have a cover, it could have a frontispiece. Frontispiece is actually a thin, a thin page which can actually display some of the graphs and the charts that you have put there in the beginning. Fine, and that actually raises the curiosity level of the readers. Then the title page, as you already know, copyright notice, because it is your report, so you have written it, so it is your copyright. And then forwarding letter. If you're writing a report from your organization and you are to submit it to some other official, naturally, what you are supposed to do is you are actually to get a forwarding letter. Now, forwarding letter, there is a difference between a forwarding letter and a preface. Preface is what Sahulaji or what Ravi writes, because it is Ravi's report. But forwarding letter is somebody who is an expert or somebody who has assigned you the task of writing the report. And then comes acknowledgement, because a report is actually the culmination of so many people who have some way or the other help you in the preparation of the report. So this is one page where you are going to show your gratitude. My difference here also, there's a lot of difference in the language. I sometimes see that when people write the acknowledgement, they follow the same sort of language. I'm thankful to, I'm thankful to, I'm thankful to. Many people also speak the same thing, but that actually becomes very dry, fine, very, and uninteresting. So there you have to make a sort of change in the language. I am thankful to Mr. X. I shall also be failing in my duty if I do not thank Professor Binit Sahula for inviting me to this youth gathering. It is actually an honor for me to show my gratitude to Mr. Ravi, who has introduced me today. Just I'm giving you example that how variety works, my different. And then comes table of contents, list of illustrations, and abstract and summary. Now, here, other things are quite ordinary, but then one must try to understand what is the difference between an abstract and a summary. People sometimes substitute it for each other. Sometimes they think that they are the same thing. No, my dear friends, there is a difference. In many reports or many organizations will ask you to provide a sort of executive summary also, which is a detailed one. Fine, that actually tells the entire report, but then in a very summarized manner. Abstract is only, abstract is the shorter version. Abstract does not have any figure, any graph. Fine. It is, if calculated on the basis of the percentage, it is only 2% of the entire report, whereas summary may be between 5 to 10%. So we need to understand. And there is one thing that I also forgot. People at times also confuse between preface and foreword. Preface is when Ravi is writing his report, fine, that is the preface. And foreword is when Ravi wants a sort of celebrity to say a few words or write a few words about him. So this actually prompts the book, the report, to become more authentic, because it actually has got the words of a person who is an expert in his or her own areas. Now, my dear friends, these are the main parts of report, where when we talk about the main parts, every report will have an introduction. An introduction also will have certain things. It will talk about the background. It will also talk about what has been done, what you are going to do, how the report is divided, how the data was collected, and what sort of interpretation is there in the report. And when you come to the main body, main body of a report is actually the entire mirror, the body and the soul of the report, isn't it? And based on this discussion in main body, what you will do, you will bring discussion. Discussion will have analysis, it will have tables, charts, and all the tables and charts, they are actually to be related. When you are describing something, please put the figure there only so that readers may not have to wait for the next page where he or she can see. If that is also a sort of difficulty, you can refer to that, please find in figure such and such, because you always have to keep the reader's engagement or reader's attention intact. Based on the discussion, you come to the conclusion, my dear friends. And after the conclusion, if possible, or if you have been asked for, you can come for the recommendation, my dear. You can provide the recommendation. Now, what should you recommend? That is often the question. We have already given the conclusion on the basis of the data, but somewhere or the other, there is your personality also, and you feel that if this can be recommended, so recommendation has to be very feasible. It has to be practicable. It should not be that you actually recommend something that cannot be achieved, right? So it actually has to be very practical. And the recommendation page has to be very short. The number of recommendations also should be numbered, and it should be less in number. And since your report is actually the culmination of all those, now any curious reader would like to see why Ravi has given this recommendation. So he would like to see what sort of questionnaire were there, what sort of interview sheets did he use, what were the graphs and charts. Now Ravi might be thinking that if I could have provided everything in the report, why should I provide it there? My dear friends, not everything can be provided in the inside of the report, because it may break the flow of language. It may become a sort of obstacle, my dear friends. That is why there are certain things that have to be kept, and for that there is another important room and another important page, which we call another important section, which we call back matter. In the back matter, all other pieces of information, charts, figures, whatsoever, they can be flushed to the back matter. In the back matter also, you can provide bibliography, glossary, index, and all that, my dear friends. They will actually act like something which the readers will find to their satisfaction, that they are supporting materials, my dear friends. Now, you can also provide a list of references. Sometimes you provide a list of references, and sometimes, if you want that your readers should read even more in that area, you provide a sort of bibliography. On many occasions, you may find that you may have a lot of materials to be put in the back matter, and for that, what you do is you can divide it into several appendixes, and every appendix should be unique. If one appendix talks about the graphs and the charts, another appendix talks about the tables, another appendix talks about the data sheets or the interview sheets or the questionnaire. So that is, as a learned person and as an experienced one, you will be able to do that, my dear friends. So this is how you can structure your report. Now, there are certain things that we have already discussed, that what should be there in the main body and in the introduction. The introduction, as we said, it will have all these 10 elements, fine, in order to tell people. Because many people do not have, BG executives especially, they do not have time enough to have a look at the entire report, or do not have time enough to read the entire report in totality. That is why they may either go to the introduction page, or they may go to the conclusion or the recommendation page. And if they feel any doubt, they will go to the appendixes and will see how this report writer has come to this juncture, my dear friends. Now, the discussion part, as I said, here there will be several divisions. They will be not only numbered, they will be divided, there will be topics, subtopics, data, interpretation, analysis, and then finally, all these will actually propel the report writer to come to a sort of conclusion. As I said, do not conclude, and when you are going to conclude, see to it that no new information should be there in the conclusive part of the report. Conclusion is completely the summum bonum of what you have done in the discussion part, my dear friend. This conclusion actually is a sort of finding which answers several problem statements that you might have made in the beginning of the report. And then with the conclusion, we come to the end of the discussion. It is actually a culmination or a blend of logical inferences and judgments which are based on the analysis. Regarding recommendations, I again emphasize upon the fact that do not recommend unless and until you have been asked to do so. Now, in back matter, as I said, back matters are supporting documents. So there can be appendixes, list of references. Here you simply need to understand what is actually the difference between a list of reference and a bibliography. And also spare some time on glossary and index my difference. Now, when we say bibliography, bibliography, as the word comes from biblio, from books. I mean, suppose I'm reading a report, but my interest or my intensity has not been satisfied. So what should I do? Report writer who actually looks into the seeds of time might have realized that he might require some more information. So he will provide a list of books, isn't it? So bibliography is a list of textual books, references, fine, papers, other things which actually can ignite or create a sort of curiosity in the writer's thinking and which might have been helpful and will be helpful to the readers also. Sometimes the readers are also going to conduct a research in the same area or write a report in the same area. It is a comprehensive list. It may be a longer one. One thing that is common is it will be alphabetically arranged, but then a list of references becomes very specific, isn't it? In list of references, you cannot maintain that alphabetical order. What you're going to do is you are actually going to write it or mention it in the way that you have cited in your report. My dear friends, we'll spend some more time on bibliography by giving you the examples when we come to the next lecture on style. Now, a list of references will only contain works, as I said, which were cited or which actually help in the text of your essay, report, or paper. Entries here can be arranged alphabetically, but then that is not suitable because you have arranged it in a different manner, and the reader's curiosity can be satiated only when they are also cited in the same order, isn't it? Now, let us also try to understand that what is actually the difference. Here are some, you can find for your own satisfaction some of the list of bibliographical details, isn't it? And then I also need to spend some time on the difference. I'm actually coming towards the last leg of this first lecture. That is why I need to point out the difference between glossary and index. What is actually the difference? Now, glossary, every field will have its own specification. We'll see in the next lecture how every field will have its own jargon. Jargon of your field may be very difficult for me to understand. So here in the glossary, you are going to provide a list of technical terms. Here also you make the alphabetical arrangement, but then you have also provided the explanations for the satisfaction of your readers. Your readers, if they come across anything new, anything different, the readers would like to know what it is, what does actually this mean. So that is why on the glossary page, there are explanations provided. Whereas index is also alphabetically arranged, but in index also there are topics, subtopics. Suppose there is a term like say any term, and then there may be smaller terms also, but they come under the same head. So there will be topic and subtopics. Fine. Under one word, there may be some other words also who are some way or the other associated with this. Suppose we say report. Report may be one word, and under report head, there may be informational report, then analytical report, routine reports, and in index, page numbers are also given. So if I simply want to go to a specific one, what I will do, I will go to the index and find out that word. Naturally, I'll save my time. So it helps me save my time. It is actually a quick guide to the readers. Now, my dear friends, having understood the importance and the structure of the report, now I think you are in a better frame. You already might have decided, and of course, at times there is some overlapping also, but then you might have felt that now if I'm provided a chance and if I'm provided a sort of data, I'll be able to write a report of my own. Now, my dear friends, when you are going to write the report, as I said, who will come to your help? Language. And in the next lecture, after 5 minutes, I need a 5 minute break. After 5 minutes, we'll discuss what actually is language and how does language play a very significant role. Because at times we find many papers, many reports where there are lots of inconsistencies, inconsistencies of thought, inconsistencies of language, inconsistencies of grammatical fine differences, my difference, and that we shall try to resolve when we come to the next lecture. Till then, you can also have some water and be ready for the next one. Thank you. So, Rabi ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Saula ji, how are you?
Fine, fine, sir. Thank you. And thanks for supporting us, sir. So nice of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll begin the next one after 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Right, sir. 8:15, sir. 6:15.
Right.
6:15.
6:15.
Thank you. Sir. Right.
Fine, fine. Thank you. Hello.
Sir, good evening.
Good
Sir,
evening.
please.
Good evening.
Sir, please.
So
Thank you.
slides visible?
Yeah, visible, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank
Presentation
you.
mode में डाल दीजिए, sir.
हाँ.
Thank you.
So welcome back, dear friends. In the previous lecture, we discussed the structure. Now, having understood the structure, as I was saying, that now comes the language part. Why a report becomes very special? Why a report prompts to decision making? And what is the role of language in a report? So in this lecture, we shall be trying our level best to understand how to overcome the difficulties of language by understanding the elements of style, which is actually required for our technical report. But before we go into it, let us try to understand, because all of us understand the fact that when we say language, we mean words, we mean sentences, we mean phrases, we also mean certain units, we mean grammar, and many more. In this regard, Nathaniel Hawthorne, a Nobel Prize winner, fine, he says, words so innocent and powerless as they are, as standing in a dictionary, how potent for good and evil they become in the hands of one who knows how to combine them. My dear friends, much significance is there of words. Words will help us make sentences. There are words scattered here and there. But then how we are going to choose these words? Words have got power, but words are powerless till they actually are being used by a dexterous user. They become powerful only when somebody knows how to combine them, how to structure them. Now, when we say style, and when we talk about the elements of style, in this lecture, we shall also be providing you the examples so that you can relate it, isn't it? So now when we say style, it actually refers to the selection of the words. Which words should I select? Now, when we say which words should I select, we actually mean that every discipline will have its own intake of words. The words that we use in one discipline may become very difficult in other discipline. It may have a different meaning as well, depending upon the context, depending upon the situation. So selection of words, we shall be discussing which words and how words become powerful and which words have to be controlled, which words have to be used. Then comes jargons, fine. Then cliché, then foreign words and phrases, then abbreviations, redundancy, circumlocutions, and grammatical correctness. Now, my dear friends, on the right hand side, you can have a look at the sentence that I have used. Now, don't you find that this sentence, where in this sentence I say, the need of the hour is to abandon all hostilities and invite a camaraderie among the warring factions for the betterment of the masses. Now, the sentence appears to be very correct. But for an ordinary reader, because you do not know who are going to be the readers of your report. Maybe it is not confined only to your boss who is from the same area, but it may also go to some other people who are not familiar with your area. For them, this sentence will become difficult because there has been used a difficult word like camaraderie, isn't it? Now, this camaraderie word, if we substitute this, then our sentence will become easier it will become meaningful. You can also try on your own end, my dear friends. Now, not only the difficult words, but sometimes what happens is we actually start using, in a way, some abstract words. Sometimes we also start using some very cumbersome words. As children, all of us have experienced the phase when we wanted to attract the attention of others by using a difficult word. But then that was only in our childhood. Now, as adult learners, we feel that if our sentence is not to be understood by others, what will happen? Maybe the decision that will be taken on the basis of it, maybe the person that I will be considered as, maybe the writer that I will be rated as will result in a sort of writer who does not know how to have a control over words. That is why when we have to decide about words, we must see that instead of a difficult word, we need to use a common word, a familiar word. Here, there are certain sentences you can think for your own and think whether you are also able to understand or interpret the meaning. Some of you, of course, might be, but many of us may not be able to unravel the meaning of these sentences. That is why I say, in order to make our writing more effective, in order to make our writing more friendly, try to ensure clarity, cohesion, and conciseness. Now look at the sentences. The very first sentence is, here I'm not only giving you a sentence, but I'm also giving you advice. Avoid using sesquipedalian words in a sentence. Now many of you, if you can relate it to the context, you can understand, because I have made it very, intentionally I have made it in a sentence. So the meaning of the word sesquipedalian or the word sesquipedalian may be difficult for an ordinary reader. So what we should do? We should here say, avoid using difficult words, lengthy words, right? So this sesquipedalian word actually has got a sort of difficulty level. Now come to the next sentence. The writing on the wall suggests a shortage of fuels in the light of the war between Israel and Iran, isn't it? Now, the writing on the wall. Now, what is writing on the wall, my dear friends? The writing of the wall can be easily substituted if we say that there is a prediction of fuel shortages in the wake of the war between two nations, isn't it? So this word also can be substituted. Now come to the third sentence where we say, the government has left no stone unturned to control the pandemic. No stone unturned, isn't it? This is actually the use of a phrase here. Now, many people may not be. Many people might be thinking that why this stone and then unturned. So what actually the writer here wants to say, that the government has made all efforts to control pandemic. Many actors, now come to the next sentence, many actors may soon get a sapiana. Now people may think that what is this sapiana? As I've been saying, that there are different areas and every area will have its own terminology. Here this word is a jargon, my dear friend, because it comes from legal, fine, it is a legal word, sapiana. It could have been better substituted had it used. Many actors may soon get a call or a summons from the court, right? Now, again, we come to another word, because in all the sentences, I have actually made them a sample sentence based on what I'm going to discuss. There has been a past history of the repetition of epidemic in every age. Now here we are using a redundant expression, a past history. History is always past by different. So there is no use of bringing here another redundant expression like a past history. And then the last sentence, the new appointed ones are eligible for an FIG. Here we are using an abbreviation. So this FIG, especially people from the academics may know that this is faculty initiation grant. But if it goes to people of the other discipline, people of other professions, they may actually interpret it differently. Hence, what actually should be done, my dear friends? We should always try to eliminate the difficulty by bringing in simple words. And remember the formula that I had said in the previous talk: KISS, keep it simple and short. Now, here you can find, because at times many of us feel that what we use, how can it become a sort of redundancy, because that has become a part of our habit, a part of our habit of writing. But here are some, examples of redundant expressions. Basic fundamentals. We have often been hearing people saying that he is actually still unaware of the basic fundamentals. Would it not be better had he or she said he is still unaware of the fundamentals? There is no need of basic. They were few in number. Now, this few in number means nothing, isn't it? Likewise, the true facts of this report, fact is always true. So it is a sort of redundant expression. Like that, there are others also: repeat again, alone by oneself, retreat backwards. We never retreat forwards, my dear friend. And there's one very common redundant expression that most of the people, even adults, use: I shall be returning back in an hour. You will return in an hour. You'll not return back in an hour. Because return and back, they do not go together, my difference. On the right hand side, you can find that I have taken one sentence from a science magazine. This is done by means of inserting a forgatory 3F arterial embolectomy catheter, resulting in exposure of the subendothelial layer. Now see, where is the redundant expression, my dear friends? Here simply we are trying to make the sentence longer by making a use of by means of. Even, because redundancy is that sort of word whose elimination does not affect the meaning of the sentence. So that can be easily eliminated, isn't it? So we can always say this is done by inserting a forgatory 3F arterial catheter to result in or to expose subendothelial layer, isn't it? So there is no use of bringing a noun exposure, because every now and then people often go, there is actually a habit among people, they go for the nouns. Most often they go for the nouns, and at times they make it a noun clustering, my difference, we shall see in the next ones. Now see, these are all redundant expressions: unexpected, surprise, positively certain. I'm positively certain. No, I'm certain that this program of Professor Saula is going to help many people. I'm certain. I'm not positively certain, because one cannot be negatively certain. So certain itself means positive, isn't it? Now here you can find that there is an example. This room is spacious enough to accommodate the overwhelmingly large audience that is expected to attend the meeting. Now see, not only is the sentence longer, but then the sentence actually unnecessarily makes use of spacious enough and then accommodate only. So you simply say this room can accommodate 100 people expected for the meeting, isn't it? So you will find that language has a very strong influence on our report. And as I said, we talk about words, not only redundancies, but cliches also, my different cliches. Now, what are these cliches? Cliches are when any expression, they may appear like phrases. They might have been used quite excessively in the past, and now they have also become redundant. So that is what we mean by cliche. Fine. You'll often find, especially when somebody is going to give a presentation or a speech, one may usually make use of cliches in order to make his or her talk very attractive. But when it comes to writing, there is no room for cliche, my dear. So let us not say food for thought. Fine. If I say there isn't there enough food for thought in this lecture, we can simply say, is there not much content in this lecture? Fine. Crowning glory, that again is a cliche, part and parcel, burning question. Fine. Kashmir has become a burning question between India and the neighboring country. Fine, overriding considerations. So all these, if you can, isn't it? And that is why I say that when you have written the report, please revise. Please revise so that you may be able to understand where you can reduce, where you can eliminate. Fine. Now, my dear friends, I had already referred to the term jargon. Jargon becomes a jargon for me when I am not familiar with it. For example, words which are very familiar in any area, say, for example, computer science, mechanical engineering, biotechnology. So, the words which are very familiar there, maybe that will become a jargon for me. Words which are very, very familiar in the legal circle may become a jargon for me. So, as a conscious reader, as a conscious writer, what I need to do? I need to eliminate the excessive use of jargons. Now, here you can find all these are jargons. Many of you, sometimes or the other, might be using it unconsciously. Sapiana, sapiana, I had already discussed in one of the sentences, which comes from the legal word imagery. Fine, imagery, all of you know. So when you say imagery and image for you may be different than it is for me, because I'm a man of literature. Fine. Of course, now I'm more into sciences and engineering also by delivering lectures here and there. So I know the difference between image, the image of the retina, and the image in literature. In literature, image is a picture of words, and imagery becomes something through which we are going to express, fine, but in a very subdued, in a very hidden way. Then comorbidity, during COVID, this word got a lot of familiarity, my dear friend. Core competency, biota, word from the biological sciences, isn't it? Dark horse, something, sometimes you say, oh, this my bike has become a dark horse. It eats a lot of fowl, isn't it? Fake news, fine. So sometimes on many occasions we use it. Flip-flopper, a person who is never fixed, fine. And then the tree hugger, a tree hugger is one who is environmentally conscious, fine. But then when we use it, maybe you are a man of environmental sciences, so you might use it frequently, but for others it may pose a sort of difficulty. Now, another example that we have taken from the jargon is, now here you can see, the spectrum of infection with a human immunodeficiency virus continues to evolve with the availability of new scientific information. Now, my dear friend, the sentence looks fine, sound, but does not sound well for an ordinary reader like me. So what I need to do, I need actually to make it easier by saying new scientific information makes us aware of the range of infections in people with HIV. When you say human immunodeficiency virus, many people won't believe, because HIV as an acronym has become so famous that people will understand. So, it depends upon, that is why background of the reader is very important for us to understand. Fine. So please try to eliminate the use of excessive jargons in your report. Now, dear friends, on many occasions while writing, you actually come across the use of many foreign words and many foreign phrases. Now, these foreign words and phrases, they also pose a lot of difficulty. It would be better if you get yourself familiar with these words and then you substitute it when you are going to write a report. On the left hand side, you get a list of the foreign words. For example, the raison d'etre of the report tells us to write succinctly, clearly, and concisely. Now, raison d'etre is a foreign word that actually means the most important reason to exist. Then infra-dig, we may often say it is infra-dig for our country to grope in when other countries are fighting against each other. Infra-dig, that is again a foreign word, which actually means below our dignity. Tatata, this word tatata becomes very common, especially among younger generation people who believe that it is a sort of personal interview like rendezvous, which is a secret meeting. Rendezvous again is a foreign word and phrase. Then wide supra, loxit, opsit, ev initio, fine. All these are Latin words, foreign words, which actually may complicate the meaning and the content. Hence, what is advisable is to eliminate the use of such words, rather confine ourselves to writing in a very simple manner, as you can find in the example given here. The aim of scientific writing is to validate the description in an immaculate manner. Now, the sentence is correct grammatically, but then it becomes difficult because we have used here two difficult words. One word may not be difficult for you, validate, but then when we say immaculate, it actually comes from literature. So we need to revise it and say the aim of scientific writing is to ensure description clearly. I hope you are able to understand me. I am audible, my dear friends. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. We are
Okay,
following.
fine. Now, when we go for the uses of words, as I have been saying, there are many words which you find very attractive, but then they do not convey the meaning that you really want. Sometimes the meaning is actually stupefied. The meaning is actually obstructed when you use such words which may appear very familiar to you. But maybe because you are not writing it for yourself, you are writing it for the readers. So when you make a use of the word euphoria, impasse, terminate, propagate, validate, kindred, synergy, emanate, all these words become very difficult. So what we should do, we should actually try to go for, and you know, the best way for doing this is you must be able to know the synonyms of these words. For example, here is a sentence, if I can say, it is mandatory to expedite available resources to terminate the impasse and bring euphoria. Now, see, the sentence appears very attractive, isn't it? While we listen, it's very pleasant. But when we come to derive its meaning, it may pose a difficulty to the ordinary readers. Hence, what we can do is we can always say it is mandatory, fine, it is mandatory to utilize the existing resources to end the deadlock and bring happiness, isn't it? Now, this sentence will appear, e.g., this sentence will appear pleasant to the readers and will also bring a sort of relief and ease to the readers. Now, my dear friends, we often say that when you are writing a report, because you're writing a report for the specific audience whom you do not know also, isn't it? So what we should do is, we should also try to avoid the uses of circumlocutus. By circumlocutus, I mean roundabout expressions, unusual phrasing. Fine? What are those? When you try to say something, but you actually make it a sort of circumlocutory. You actually make it round and round. For example, here you see this sentence again appears to be very circumlocutory. The storage facility consists of a number of steel fabricated cylindrical bottles. The bottles, linked by the header tubes, are sited in an area adjacent to the compressor building the ground having been excavated for the purpose of siting the bottles, the earth being subsequently replaced such that the bottles are now subterranean. Now see, in the first instance, you will not understand. Fine. And of course, I will not understand because I do not have any acquaintance with all these. But even those people who are acquainted with the steel fabricated cylindrical bottles, they may also find it difficult because not only the expressions are longer, the sentences are longer, but then they are framed in such a manner that they again bring a sort of difficulty. Such sentences we can always revise. Why such sentences only? Even if you come across some such paragraphs also, sometimes you come across paragraphs after paragraphs where the reader has not, where the writer has not been able to think about the audience or the reader, the difficulty exists. So let us revise this sentence and say, but without compromising with the meaning. The storage consists of cylindrical bottles. The bottles, linked by header tubes, are buried beside the compression building. Now see how easy it has become. Every ordinary reader can also understand. Now, when we say circumlocutions, there can be some other examples also. Some of these examples maybe from literature, fine. Now see, there are some words which have been used very intentionally to confuse the reader. Modern life, like modern art, is benevolently misleading and shrouded in mystery, which quite a few of us are able to unravel. The doctrines dissipated by these demons of knowledge are good to listen, but too bad to be put into practice. Now see what the writer wants to say. The writer simply wants to say that modern life has become as complicated, as abstract like modern art. Fine, it has become very confusing. And those people, fine, demons of knowledge. Here the demons of knowledge refer to the artists, the painters. Fine. So these creative people, when they say their principles, they appear to be good to listen, but it's very difficult to be put into practice. So that is how we can unravel, that is why we can make it easier. Now, another sentence you can also find, we solicit any recommendation that you wish to make, and you may rest assured that any such recommendations will be given our careful consideration as to the utilization thereof. What is the problem with this sentence? The problem with the sentence is that so many nouns have been used, repetitions are there, and then it actually is a very long sentence. Please try to cut it, make it short, and simply say, when you can say, please give us your suggestions, we would carefully consider them. How easy it is. But then we are actually living in an age of sick hurry and divided aims, and we do not think about our readers. Rather, we simply think only about the way that we want to express. My dear friends, as I have been saying, that with the arrival of technology, and because people do not have much time, they go for acronyms. But the same acronym might be explained differently by different people. That is why we should restrict ourselves to those acronyms which are very popular. Here is the list of some acronyms which actually may be popular, but some of them may be unpopular also. And for those who are not familiar, for them it will be difficult. CVR, fine. CVR, cockpit voice recorder. But then somebody else can also have something else. OTP, which is very familiar. Everyone knows OTP. ABM, ATR, fine. Air traffic control, air traffic room, fine. FIG, faculty initiation grant. STC, short-term course. But then that can have some other explanations as well. SEJ, special economic zone. And because people have been running in a shortage of time, they have also coined their own terms, my dear friend. They have shortened also. For example, poly for polytechnic, Insti. You will hear many of the students saying, Insti, I'm going to the Insti, with a lot of NQ, isn't it? And there is going to be a movie in the Audi, which our props have told us to watch. Fine. And there's a lot of prop in the Lansky class, apart from or besides the repri classes. My dear friends, man is an inventor of so many things, and man has got the facility because, as I said, thanks to the language, man became man. So his idea of invention sometimes actually leads to a sort of disruption also for ordinary readers like us. So we need to reduce the use of such things. Now, my dear friends, having said all that, let me spend some time on the use of readability in a report. So you might be thinking, what is this readability? If we analyze this term readability, the ability to read. Of course, this is ability to read. And since we have readers, we must ensure that we maintain readability. But in the 1950s, there was one person named Robert Gunning. Robert Gunning gave a readability formula, fine? And in readability formula, he actually says that readers are to be familiar with words, and as a writer, we actually need to follow a sort of fog index. You can find here, there is actually a formula fog index, which was given by Robert Gunning. And there he says that one needs to count the number of sentences and the number of words, and then one can derive this average sentence length. And when you get the average sentence length, then you can come across a sort of fog index, which will be percentage of difficult words plus average sentence length, and can be multiplied by 0.4. Now, he says that if your fog index, if you can do that, though people do not do that, but should do that, if you do that, and if whatever you get is below 12, then your document becomes readable, my dear friend. That is what we mean by readability formula. So not only should you use easy words, not only should you use day-to-day words, not only should you avoid the excessive use of jargons, cliches, redundancies, foreign words and phrases, but you should also try to ensure a sort of readability. We have also seen that when you are weaving your sentence, because of the hurry, you do not maintain certain grammatical constructions. I'll show you some examples also, where you do not maintain parallel structure and nominalizations. Now, these two terms, let me explain. Parallel structure is one when, if you are making use of a verb, please use verb in the words or in the sentences to follow. Or if you're making use of noun, please make use of noun. If you're making use of complement, make use of complement. I mean, there should be a sort of uniformity that we mean by parallel structure. Now, for example, you see the second sentence, you can see the training policy for most personnel will have the requirement of the completion of an initial 1 week seminar. Now see, the training policy for most personnel, fine? So here only you are making it very abstruse. It could be better if you simply say the training policy will require most personnel to complete a 1 week seminar. And when we say parallel structure, come to the first sentence. Report writing includes clarity, consistency, and those sentences that are concise. Now, the first two words are noun, clarity, consistency. But after end, you use a longer construction. So you are not maintaining a sort of parallelism. It could have been better. As you said, report writing includes clarity, consistency, and conciseness. So this is what we mean by parallel structure. I have given you just one example. You can have several examples that you can also think of yourself. Fine? Now, another term that I was saying, nominalization. What is nominalization? You see, actually in science, engineering, and in some other discipline, people have become habituated to make use of nominalization. By nominalization, we mean that when you unnecessarily make a verb a noun, fine. When you unnecessarily make an adjective a noun, that is what is nominalization. So where your target or where your aim can be simply achieved by making use of verb, why to go for noun? Here let us take a quote by Henry Hitchens, who actually says the dark side of verbs as nouns. In his famous The New York Times, he says, nominalizations give priority to actions rather than to the people responsible for them. When you nominalize something, you're talking only of the action, but you're not talking of the doer, who did it. Sometimes this is apt, perhaps because we don't know who is responsible or because responsibility is not relevant, but often they conceal power. Often they conceal power relationships and reduce our sense of what is truly involved in a transaction. As such, they are an instrument of manipulation in politics and in business. They emphasize products and results rather than the processes by which products and results are achieved. So what we get out of it is that while writing a report, while playing with the language, please ensure that instead of verbs, you do not use nouns unless and until it becomes very essential. Now, for example, let us take some examples by making use of certain sentences, and you can make these sentences easier by making it in the form of a verb. Experimentation in the laboratory was done by third-year students. Now see, the very first word is itself a noun, and the sentence also appears to be in the passive. So what can we do? We can simply say the third-year students experimented in the laboratory. Again, the second one, exploration on the theme of urbanization by the newly formed team discovered many complicated issues. See, exploration. So why can't we say to explore? You make it verb, fine. Many complicated issues were explored on the theme of urbanization, fine. Again, the engineers carried out threadbare analysis. Threadbare analysis. So threadbare analysis, again, you are using here a redundancy and you're also using a noun, fine. So analyze, use analyze. Bookings should be made at the earliest to avoid any last minute hassle. The sentence would become better if you simply say, you should book at the earliest to avoid any last minute hassle. You know, most of the nouns which actually end in tion, fine, they become they are nouns, but then they can be converted. They are actually verbs. In linguistics, we say in linguistics it is good. From verb we make nouns, from nouns we make verbs, from adjectives also. But then in a technical writing, in a professional writing, actually we need to eliminate the use of excessive noun habits, rather go for the verb habits. My dear friends, even on many occasions, modifiers also pose difficulty. Now, what are those modifiers? If modifiers are just like adjectives, no doubt, but then modifiers are those words which some way or the other tell about something. But sometimes, because you are not using it at the appropriate place, it distorts the meaning. You can have a look at some of the sentences. While conducting an urgent staff meeting for new regulations, the cell phone started ringing. Now see, the sentence appears to be grammatically, structurally correct, but the meaning is obfuscated because of the modifiers. Because when you say, while conducting an urgent staff meeting for new regulations, the cell phone, So was the cell phone conducting the meeting? No. So modifier is wrong here, isn't it? The sentence can be revised, isn't it? And when you revise the sentence, you could say, Mr. X's cell phone started ringing while he was conducting an urgent staff meeting. Second again, responding to the questions, my limbs started shaking. My dear friends, who was responding? My limbs? No, I was responding. No. So we have to revise the sentence. Again, holding the cup in hands, fine. Holding the cup in hands, World Cup, cheers were received from all the corners, fine. So who were holding the cup in hands? Fine. So you have to specify it. So bring the noun, fine, bring the subject. You can say when the captain held the cup in hands, he came across cheers from all corners. Now look at the other sentence where we have made use of dangling modifier. My difference, dangling modifier, they actually dangle. No. Say, for example, angrily the cordon was broken off when asked to show their identity. Was the cordon angry? No, people were angry. No. So we can say people broke off the cordon angrily when they were asked to show their identity, isn't it? The same happens in the last sentence also. Realizing the lapse is too late, the report was turned down by the investigating officer. Fine. So did the report realize the lapse? No. Fine. So we have to be very particular when you are making use of modifiers or dangling modifiers. Another thing, try to make use of active voices, sentences in the active. We believe more in action than in passive. So try to avoid the use of passive constructions, fine? And all the sentences you will find that they are passive constructions. You can convert them into active in order to lend more meaning. Say, for example, they have been robbed of their creativity because of the excessive dependence on technology that has made them lethargic. Now the sentence is in passive, fine? We can always say the students have lost their creativity because of over-reliance or dependence on technology, isn't it? Fine. So my dear friends, you see to it that but I do not say that passive constructions are bad. Passive constructions can be used only when you try to hide something. Fine. For example, a businessman or a business organization, when they find out that there is some fault on their part, they make use of passive constructions. Say, for example, they will always say, the assignment was dispatched last week. Fine. The assignment was dispatched last week when there was a holiday, isn't it? Now see, but if they really want to be inactive, we say we have dispatched, or we have compensated for the loss. We have provided you for the new list of the new products. Fine. So like that, you can go further. Again, my dear friends, in order to see that your writing becomes fresh, it is not only that you need to take care about the words and the sentences, you also need to be concerned about the paragraph. My dear friends, longer paragraphs are always irritating and it actually loses the coherence. We actually need to break the longer paragraphs, longer sentences. For example, if you read this, fine, you'll find the sentences in this paragraph are quite longer, and the writer has not taken care of the readers. Fine. So what do? We actually need to make use of the split, no, divide the longer sentences into shorter ones, make use of connectives so that a coherence can be made, so that a unity can be formulated. If you read this sentence, it is actually a lot. If you read this paragraph, it is quite longer, and even no connectives have been used. We can go for a better or a revised one when we see that we make use of connectives. My dear friends, when you're developing your paragraphs, you must also ensure that the paragraphs are developed in such a way that they bring a sort of coherence and they are linked. Fine. So sometimes when you say something, you are to support in the next line. Sometimes it is based on comparison and contrast. Sometimes it is based on cause and effect. On other occasions, you can also make use of classification, one from the several group, sometimes problem solutions, and sometimes you are going to say something, and the next time you want to say something, you say, firstly, I would explain, secondly, I would say, and finally, I would emphasize upon. This way, your writing becomes fresh, your writing actually has got a sort of vigor. Now, towards the end, let me also tell you, my dear friends, that grammar is very important. There are several ways you can check grammar. All of us have read grammar, but when we write, and because of our habit with several technical gadgets, phones, cell phones, and other channels, sometimes we lose the efficacy because we think what we say, what we speak, we should write in the same manner. But that is also difficult, my dear friend, and that brings a lot of difficulty to the readers. So I say maintain grammatical correctness. When I say maintain grammatical correctness, there are certain things that we must be able to emphasize upon. First is use of capitalization. One must be aware of where I'm going to use the capital letters. No, in research papers also you find either you start using capital letters, and even the prepositions, the relative clauses, they are also in capitals. No, that's wrong. You should try to eliminate the use of capitalizations where it is not needed. Prepositions should not be capitalized, isn't it? The first word, the first letter of the sentence should be in capital. Somebody's designation, that should be in capital. But when the same designated person is used in the sentence, then it is not capital. We can say the coordinator, Professor Sahula. Now here, the professor word will have a smaller p. But when we say Professor Sahula, it will be a big P. So actually, these are minor things, but since we are all human beings, we at times skip over. Sometimes we use double negatives, and when you use double negatives, again, it actually, some way or the other, it poses the difficulty. Fine? It impedes the reader's thought. See the example? He could not hardly foresee the result of his lethargy. Up to could not, it was fine, but he brought another word, hardly. So the sentence lost its vigor. You cannot say, I have never seen nobody, isn't it? The meaning becomes difficult. In literature, people go for such uses, but then here your main purpose is not to show alliteration or to show your literary knowledge. You actually need to understand the fact that the people on the other side, they actually want to read and to understand. Again, the use of verb, we have already discussed, verbs and nouns. Now, subject-verb agreement, in grammar we call it concord, meaning thereby that there should be a proper relationship between the subject and the verb. When you are using a longer sentence, what you do is you actually fail to link the subject and the verb. There is no agreement between the number and the verb. So you must all stick to the fact that the verb must always agree with its subject in number as well as in person. Sentence structure, make your sentences shorter. Use of voice, we have already said. We can give you some examples of capitalization, which I think is very important. Capitalize the first word and all important words only in the title of your report. Also capitalize all nouns, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, and prepositions, but then that should stand last or contain more than 5 letters. Fine. Now see, the Baltic Sea, the Renaissance, World War II, the Russian Revolution, the Grapes of Wrath. It is actually a book. Fine. Any title which precedes a noun or as a substitute for the name is capitalized. For example, President Kalam, Professor Sahula, Sri Narendra Modi. But when we say Sri Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, the will not be capitalized. Fine. When designations are not a part of the title, they are not capitalized. For example, if we say Mr. X became a professor at the age of 40. So professor is a designation, but you're using it in a sentence. So don't bring a capital P here. The country has now a new president. President is a designation, but since it is in a sentence, it will have a smaller one. Names of particular courses, journals, universities are also capitalized. Fine. That is how we say the name of the course, effective writing, and the name of your course, authoring tools. Fine. Indian Journal of English Studies, University of Madras, Mother Teresa. So all these actually, they require capitalization. I think you can read in greater detail if you consult a good grammar book, but then that is too late, my dear friend. For this is actually important for the novice ones. Another thing that I want to emphasize upon is punctuation. At times, because of the technology and excessive use of people or their habit of sitting with the computers, they have lost the sense of punctuation, my dear friends. Now, in punctuation comes period, that is full stop. Then colon, where to use colon? A colon is used to indicate further explanation and also to introduce a list of items, etc. For example, when you say man is full of desires, and the next, because you want to say something more, he loves only those who can satisfy them all. Fine. When you are talking about romantic poets and say the 3 major romantic poets include, and you give a colon. Fine. Then when we say semicolon, that is also very important. It is only used to indicate 2 dependent constructions which are joined without a conjunction. It is also used to separate independent clauses joined by however and therefore. Fine. There are some examples you can find. Wise men learn by other men's mistakes, and then we give a semicolon because it does not appear to be complete. And then we say fools by their own. He doesn't have much money, again semicolon. He will, however, help his relatives without any hesitation. My dear friends, grammar keeps us hammering every now and then as it used to do in our prime days. And in the same manner, some reference also people are not able to relate. By reference, I mean pronoun, antecedent, agreement. We have been talking about concord. No. Say, for example, you will find many people saying, everybody were there. When you say everybody, it should only have everybody is enjoying, everybody was there. A pronoun must agree with its antecedent in number and person and gender. Pronouns agree with the nearer of the 2 antecedents. Fine. Say, for example, he likes anything and anybody. Now see, two words we have used here, anything and anybody. Now here you will be thinking that what should come as a verb? He likes anything and anybody which reminds him of his achievements. So here what we do is we have tried to make a sort of agreement with the pronouns with the nearer ones. Had it been in plural, fine, then perhaps the verb would have been plural, isn't it? So, for example, either the priest or the organizers for the stampede must admit their mistakes. My dear friends, grammar is such a vast area which will take so many lectures, but I do not want to hammer your minds with grammar too much. This is how I simply advise all of you that from time to time, revise your own knowledge by having a look at some famous dailies, famous newspapers, and especially the editorials, isn't it? Here you see most of the people commit a mistake when they make use of none of. None of these students have completed their assignment. See, none of these students have completed their assignments. So sometimes when you want to say none of can take both, isn't it? So when none of actually indicates plural, we'll have a plural verb. But when none of indicates singular, for example, the second sentence, none of these builders has kept his promises. None of these builders, fine. So here we have made use of singular. Fine, my dear friends, it is actually very difficult to say everything in one lecture about maintaining the grammatical norms and nuances. And maybe sometimes or the other, when we get another opportunity, we'll specially devote it to the use of grammar in technical writing. But then this is the time where I think most of you might have been burdened and you might be finding it quite cumbersome as evening dawns upon us. But we must realize the truth. We must admit the truth that writing always becomes beautiful when we take care of our readers. And I do think that with these two lectures, you will be in such a position that when you go for drafting your own report next time, you'll be more cautious. Till then, thank you very much. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are here.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. We are here. Yes.
Yes. I can take some questions if the need be.
Sure, sir. Participants, you can raise your hands so that we can unmute you. We can take, sir, questions in reverse order. There is a question from Ankur Srivastav in the chat box. How can writing skills be built over time to pursue academic writing? As a career option.
The best answer is practice. Actually, writing has taken a back seat. And now there is another facility with the technology that can help. But one should not depend excessively on technology. If one still develops the habit of writing himself or herself regularly, then they may really sharpen their writing and become effective. Moreover, much of the writing depends on what sort of reading one does. Reading actually is relative to writing. The more you read, the more words you get, the more constructions you get. So in an age where reading is on the decline, people have to depend too much when they have to write. They actually take the use of chat GPT and all. And this problem all of us are facing.
Yes, right. I think this was an ancillary question he has raised earlier. What is the best way to build simple vocabulary and frame a correct sentence for thesis and research paper? I think partly answered by you.
Okay. Actually, every thesis has its own requirements. And suppose there is a thesis from a special area, naturally one should go for the same vocabulary because thesis is a specialized sort of writing where the examiner is also from the same field. There, what you write or you make special use of your vocabulary, that will not become a jargon. So their jargon is encouraged because that is not a jargon. Fine. And but then one must follow or cater to the rigors of academic writing. It should appear academic. When I say academic, I actually mean it should be supported by several arguments, several papers, several researches in the past, and then the writer's voice, the writer's tone, that is very important.
Yes, thank you. Any more questions? So you can raise your hands if you want to ask question on mic. I think there are not more questions. We may wait for one more minute. Dear friends, you can raise your hand if you want to talk, or you can put your queries in the chat box.
If you don't have any question, please write at least how did you find the lecture?
It was extremely useful, sir. Very useful. Right, sir. My present duty to thank you very much, sir. I think if we have other, if they ask some questions, we'll convey to you and
Fine.
in,
Thank you very much, sir.
We'll
Thank
also
you.
like to put your
Nice to be associated with you.
No, sir. Yeah, we are very happy, and getting your support is very crucial for us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
We would also request for your slides so that if you want to share with
yes, I'll send.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Good night. Namaskar.
कुछ अनाउंसमेंट है रवि सुनील?
Yes, sir.
We can close the recording and then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Recording.
So thank you all the participants. Sunil, if you have to announce something, please announce. I'm leaving. Thank you.